The morning sun bathed the city in golden light as Officer Jake stepped out of his patrol car, stretching his arms. The streets were just beginning to wake, with shopkeepers rolling up their shutters and joggers making their way through the park. It was supposed to be a quiet shift, just a routine patrol. But fate had other plans. Jake had barely turned the corner of a quiet alley when a sharp pain ripped through his side. A gunshot. The force knocked him back, his breath hitching as he staggered. He pressed a hand against the wound, warm blood seeping through his fingers. His knees buckled, and he collapsed onto the rough pavement. His vision blurred, the sounds of the city fading as his heartbeat pounded in his ears. He tried reaching for his radio, but his strength was slipping away. Was this how it was all going to end? Then, amidst the chaos, a familiar sound reached him, a soft, urgent meow. Through his hazy vision, Jake saw a small, white figure bounding towards him. It was his cat, the same tiny creature he had rescued from a storm months ago. "Cat," he murmured weakly. The little feline rubbed against his face, nudging him with her tiny paws as if trying to wake him up. She let out a distressed meow, circling him frantically. Jake tried to move, but the pain was unbearable. His breathing grew shallow, and his limbs felt like lead. His vision darkened around the edges. He was running out of time, but Cat refused to let him slip away. The small white cat darted away, her paws skimming across the pavement as she bolted toward the busy main road. She had seen Jake leave every morning, watched him come home safe. But today was different. Something was terribly wrong. Cat ran with everything she had, ignoring the honking cars and startled pedestrians. She skidded to a stop in front of a familiar black SUV. Inside, Officer Ryan was sipping his coffee, waiting for Jake to check in. He frowned when he noticed the frantic white blur pawing at his door. "What the?" He opened the door, and Cat instantly turned, looking back at him before dashing off again. Ryan's instincts kicked in. Something wasn't right. Jake's in trouble, he realized, tossing his coffee aside. He grabbed his radio. "Officer down. Send backup to my location." Then, he sprinted after the determined feline. Ryan followed Cat through the sunlit streets, his heart hammering. When he turned into the alley, his blood ran cold. Jake lay motionless on the ground, his uniform darkened with blood. "Jake!" Ryan rushed forward, dropping to his knees. He pressed his hands against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "Stay with me, man." Cat climbed onto Jake's chest, her tiny body trembling as she let out another urgent meow, as if demanding him to fight. Within minutes, sirens filled the air. Paramedics arrived, working quickly to stabilize Jake before loading him into the ambulance. Ryan scooped up Cat and jumped in beside his partner. Hours later, in the hospital, Jake's eyes fluttered open. His body ached, but he was alive. "You scared the hell out of us," Ryan said, relief flooding his face. "But we got to you just in time." Jake tried to respond, but his throat was dry. Then, he felt something soft against his arm. He turned his head and saw Cat curled up beside him, her small body rising and falling with each breath. "You saved me, didn't you?" Jake whispered, his fingers brushing her soft fur. Cat purred, pressing her head against his hand. Doctors and nurses were stunned when they heard what had happened. A cat leading an officer to his dying partner? It sounded like something out of a movie. But Ryan swore by it. Messages flooded in, calling Cat a miracle. Some even suggested giving her an honorary badge. Days later, when Jake was finally discharged, he held Cat close as he stepped outside. The morning sun was bright, the world feeling a little more beautiful. "You're not just a pet," he murmured, scratching under her chin. "You're my partner." Cat responded with a loud purr, curling her tail around his arm. From that day on, Jake never doubted that heroes came in all shapes and sizes. And sometimes, the smallest ones had the biggest hearts.